Hi, my name is Kevin Darrington. What you're about ready to see is The Art of Goal Setting, 10 Basic Steps to Achieving Your Goals. It's a seminar I did live, and I have it for you here. I'd like you to go through it. Please pay attention to the email address at the end. I would love to hear your comments. Or if you'd like to see me in person, you can contact me the same way. Hope you enjoy the show. Good evening. My name is Kevin Darrington. Tonight we are going to talk about goal setting. My presentation is titled The Art of Goal Setting, 10 Basic Steps to Achieving Your Goals. As we get started tonight, I'm going to ask you to open up your minds a little bit. Listen to what I'm saying. Try to put it into your own words and thoughts, because that is going to be the best way for you to develop your own plan for goal setting. With that, we're going to get started. I'm going to work off of PowerPoint. It's more so for me than you. But this way, as we look at it, there will be some things that I will hit. This will help you from not really having to take many notes. You can just listen to what I'm saying, kind of determine what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and then we can kind of go from there. This is going to take us about an hour. You'll kind of catch me looking up at the clock because I have a tendency to ramble in certain points, but that's the beauty of being me. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing, this is goal setting. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Why are you here? What do you want to come out of this with? What do you want to learn? What's going to be your level of commitment to setting your own goals? These are important questions to ask for the following reasons. You have already stated a goal just by walking in this room, and it's going to range in a lot of variables. First variable, you may be walking in here with a plan. You may be a very good planner already. You think you're a good goal setter. You want to see, what do I know? Will I teach you anything new tonight that will help you in your goal setting plans? That's good. You're going to be at one side of the spectrum. There's going to be a big chunk of you that are in the middle that aren't sure if you're a good goal setter or not. As we go into this program and as I talk to you about some basic goal setting techniques, you're going to say, you know what? In some cases, yeah, I do that. In some cases, man, it seems like common sense, haven't really gone there yet. In third case, you may be doing it, but you just haven't thought about it. And that happens to everybody because you can't get through life without setting goals. Sometimes they are not quite as noticeable as you may think. There's the third group of you. This is the group I love. You are here and you don't want to be here. Somebody made you come here. It could have been your spouse, could have been your children, could have been anybody that said, you know what, you need to be a better goal setter. As we go through this, you're going to see the same thing. I'm hoping what we find tonight is I kind of bring everybody into the middle. For those of you that think you are very good goal setters now, I hope you do come out of tonight with a few different thoughts on how you can really work to better yourself at goal setting. For those of you that didn't want to be here, I hope I don't bore you over the next 55 minutes. I'd like it that you enjoy it while you're here. For those of you in the middle, I'm hoping what we're going to do is take the middle from where it is now and move it forward a little bit so when you leave here, you really feel like you're a better goal setter. As we go on, personal reflection. Before we get into goal setting, we've got to talk about personal reflection. Now, personal reflection, as defined by Kevin Darrington, is the ability to accurately assess one's strengths and weaknesses. This is key. You cannot go after a goal unless you know who you are. As you get into doing that, you're going to find, once again, most of you fall into two categories. There is going to be the people that are chronically hard on themselves, and you know who you are. It's never good enough. It's never fast enough. You're never proud enough of it. Trust me, you're too hard on yourself. There's going to be the other half of you that really find it hard to criticize yourself. You're going to be able to pull out all your strengths, but you're going to shy away from your weaknesses. I encourage you not to do that. You have to know where your weaknesses are so you can learn to play to your strengths. You inherently do that, like everybody does. You go to what is your best side. Everybody's probably seen the new Leon commercial. I love the new Leon commercial because Leon doesn't have a bad side, but he always shows his left side. Now, why is that? He knows that his left side's his best side, but he's not going to talk to you about his right side. But you notice in every commercial, he's got to stand on the left side. It is knowing your strengths. Maybe it's not a strength. Maybe it's just what makes you feel comfortable. That is also a strength because it's going to make you easier when you talk to somebody. To show this, because it is such a key point, I want to do a comparison. I've laid out person A and person B, and we're going to go through their strengths first, And then we're going to go through their weaknesses, and we're going to talk a little bit about person A and person B. Person A, their strengths. They're smart. It's a good strength. They're nice. They're open-minded and a good communicator. It's a good strengths to have. Now let's look at person B. Person B is goal-oriented. They're focused, driven. They're intelligent. Same as number one, and they're a change agent. As we look at those two, what you kind of see is person A, you'd probably classify as a little bit more passive than person B. A lot of the same characteristics, it's in the tone that they use. I'm smart versus intelligent. Smart is first versus third. You don't have the strong words like goal-oriented, focused, driven. As you get into it, finally, change agent. I love the comment change agent. If you're an agent of change, you are the epitome of a goal-setting person because you don't want to stick with the status quo. Some cases you may need to understand that the status quo is probably not a bad way to go, but you want to make a change. That is what you are. You're a change agent. Good strengths to have on both sides, I think. Now into the weaknesses. Person A, unlucky. I love the word unlucky. Unlucky. You can be lucky, you can be unlucky. Reactive, an underachiever. And finally, complacent. Those happen. You should know if you fall into any one of those categories. You now look at person B. Now, person B was very confident, but you look at their weaknesses. They're also impatient. They're also unsatisfied, compulsive, and have tunnel vision. As you look at it, I'm going to bounce back, hopefully, to the strengths. Let's focus on person B for a second. Person B is goal-oriented. They're focused. They're driven. They are pushing every day to become a change agent. Okay, those are all good things to have. If we look at their weaknesses, they're almost a mirror image. Person's impatient, unsatisfied, has tunnel vision. Okay, you have to watch. Your strengths and your weaknesses may be mirrors of each other. What you play so hard to be the best at could be your biggest weakness. You have to figure out where the middle ground is as you're going forward. Do I push much harder? Am I keeping my options open? Am I thinking about what I need to do next? Those are the key things you have to look at. Person A is unlucky, complacent, reactive. You're back into kind of a passive person A versus a person B. Now, the question for everybody, who is this person? Is this two completely different people, or is this the same person? Now I'm going to give you the answer. It's the same person. Person A is Kevin Darrington at the age of 22. Person B, fortunately I have to now say I'm at the age of 37, that is me. I wrote down both things as I really looked at myself 15 years apart, and they are in some ways very similar. I still classify myself as a fairly smart person. I'm a problem solver. I like to get into things. But it's no longer what I consider to be my biggest strength. I find it much more important to deliver on what I set out to do than I do just a mere idea of being smart. I'd like to consider I'm still nice, but it doesn't make it into the top 4. I'm still that same kid from Indiana. I still smile. I still follow the Colts. And with the exception of my children, probably everybody thinks I am a very nice guy. But it's not in the top 4. Open-minded. Open-minded is a key ingredient. I will always be very open-minded. But as you look at it, I've changed that into now I'm open-minded, but I've turned that into being a change agent. That's what I want to do. I want to be a change agent as I go. Very similar. The biggest take on it is probably my own personal confidence when I go to hit something. I'm going to attack it. I'm going to attack it with a passion, to be driven, focused, etc. But as I look at it, I've got to make sure that now I'm just not going to be open-minded to it. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to make a change to that. The good communicator, key to anything you do. You cannot be a change agent. You cannot be good goal-oriented in a lot of cases unless you're a good communicator. It is something that is still there, but it's kind of blended into the rest of them. Weaknesses. My weaknesses now are not the same weaknesses I had before, and that is very common. You know what your weakness is. You work on your weakness. You don't want to be complacent anymore. I've turned my complacency so far over now, if anything, I suffer from tunnel vision. I get into a situation, and as we talk about the 10 basic steps to goal setting, I go into everything I do with a goal. And I want to go after that goal. And once I set that goal, and I've set a target for myself, and I've got myself in a range, all the things we're going to talk about, I go after that goal with everything I've got. Occasionally, things don't always work out as they are meant to. You run into problems. You run into snags. Things get tough. When you do that, you have to make sure, tunnel vision, you don't continue down a path that's just not going to work. I didn't have that problem 15 years ago because I was more complacent. As things came in, I may fit a tough task. I just kind of let that tough task move me. It's not the answer either. You face a tough task, you have to figure out a way to adapt and overcome that tough task. But don't blind yourself into being a tunnel vision person. Compulsive, my wife says I'm compulsive. I'm not sure I buy I'm compulsive all the time, but she tells me that you have to take into consideration what other people tell you. I will tell you I do get fairly anal on some of the things I do. I think it goes with kind of being tunnel vision, the unsatisfied, the impatient. But you should do this periodically. Personal reflection is something you should do every day, definitely every week, every month, because you live in an ever-changing environment. You want to be ever-changing. You want to continue to grow and learn, and every goal you take is going to take you that way. So as you do that, you are going to be changing yourself. You have to determine, are all those changes good? Some are going to be. Some of them may not be so good. Your strengths will probably always be your strengths. They're going to shift around a lot. Your weaknesses are probably what is going to change the most. Folks, you will always have weaknesses. Don't be scared of them. Understand them. Embrace them. Really try to make sure you understand them, not to the defeatist point of view where you're saying, oh my God, I'll never change. I see it every day, but I don't want to do anything about it. You can do something about it. That's why we're here tonight. You can turn, actually, some of your weaknesses into strengths. They won't be there for long, probably, because you have to work so hard to get them that way, but it's a chance for you to go out and constantly better yourself. You're going to find your weaknesses. In both of these, don't take that as a negative context. Your strengths can always get better. Your weaknesses, you can always reduce the impact on you. You're always going to have them, and it's important to understand, but you can make them better by setting good goals. Okay, what am I talking about? We're going to talk about tonight 10 steps to setting goals. Right, the first step seems like the easiest. Sometimes you do it without even knowing it. You have to establish a goal. Now, what is that? What do I mean? You have to set out to do something, and you have to consciously know why you're going to do it. You have to establish a goal and a reason for achieving it. It doesn't need to be specific and shouldn't be specific. It should be, I want to go to college. I want to get a new job. I want to lose weight. I want to get more into my faith. I want to be better as a recreational basketball player. I want to drop my golf handicap 10 strokes. Everything you do in everyday life is a goal-setting exercise. But the first step to it is you've got to recognize what you want to do. In this step, you got to keep it general. Okay? If you want to lose weight, great. Don't say how much you want to lose. If you want to get into college or a trade school or you want to better yourself through an MBA program, great. Don't pick which one. Don't even pick what concentration you want to go into yet because there's many more things that need to be done. What you're doing is you're getting started. That's step one. Make sure it is not too specific. If you cut ahead, you're going to miss some of the steps we're going to go through. It's going to end up hurting you as you move along. Research. You're going to spend a lot of time in this step. This is where you take your general goal, whatever it is, and you're going to go attack it. You're going to attack it from at least 4 different perspectives. And we're going to spend some time on research tonight because any good goal, you can't get there unless you know what you're trying to get. So for example, if you are going to college, that's what you want to do. Okay, well you have to go out and determine what are the factors that fall into that. You got to go out and figure out how important is a GPA. How important are your SAT scores or your other board type scores? How much do extracurricular activities come into play? What is your real desire? Are you going to get it out of college, or should it be a trade school? Should you go to a certain part of the country? You've got to spend a lot of time figuring out all those different aspects, because in the research phase, there is no such thing as too much knowledge. If you're doing something as easy as running a marathon, and there's nothing easy about running a marathon, folks, I did it once, but you have to just walk into it. It's not just simply getting out of your bed, saying, today I'm going to run a marathon, and jumping out and doing it. You have to research what foods should you eat. How much is good training? How should you train? Is it all running? Is it swimming? Is it weightlifting? How should you train? Mountains, road course, cross country, etc. A lot of different angles, even as something as simple as that. My personal favorite right now, losing weight. Wearing black tonight. Nothing mysterious about that. They say black is thinning. Now, my wife tells me every once in a while, yeah, maybe you should go all black, but I try to come up with this type of thinning attitude. So, how do I do that? Well, you can obviously take the approach of don't eat. Don't think that's going to work for me. I come from a very long line of big people who like to eat, so that's not an option. Eating more healthy is key. You get older, you start experiencing more, body slows down in metabolism. You have to understand what foods work well for you, what foods don't. What foods can you get accustomed to eating? I have a very big attraction to red meat. I've eaten it all my life. It's not always the best thing for you. What is a good supplement? I have to look for options in where I'm going. Finally, if you are going out to get a new job, right? Second biggest thing you may do. If you go out and find a new job, you have to figure out all the basics. Everybody always goes to, well, I'm going to get a new job, I want to make more money. Okay, yeah, that's clearly important. Guys, it's clearly important. But are you going to be happy? Are you going to be learning from that job? Are you going to feel comfortable in that job 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years from now? You can't just go to the first one and say, I'll do it. Is it in the right location? Is location an issue? Are you sure? You may say location's a bad thing, but you may not have researched it. You don't want to analyze at this point. You just want to gather data. If you start eliminating options too early, you're going to skew your research. You're going to take yourself down a path where you start in and you say, okay, I want to run a marathon. And immediately say, well, yeah, I want to run a marathon, but I can only run this marathon. And I read one book and this person said I should do it this way. Okay, well, now you're following one person's choice. That person's not you. You have to modify what you want to do to your personal specifications. You have to go back to your personal reflection. When I ran a marathon, I got to tell you, I read 4 different books. And in every single book, it was said to me I should run every day. I'm a big man. If I ran every day, I had shin splints from an earlier running experience where I didn't train. If I would have run every day, I would have never made it. I had to parse that for what I really knew about myself. And it took some trial and error. You know, if they said run 5 days, maybe I ran 3. If I felt comfortable, maybe I'd run 4. If I felt like I was getting overtired, I'd go back to running 3 times a week. It was basically trying to customize good knowledge, good information into what I was really doing. But the first step is making sure I had all the facts. I didn't have one point of view, I had 4. Diet, I didn't have one point of view, I had 4. You have to make sure you're looking at it from all angles. Analyze is my favorite step. As we get into analyzing things, you can overanalyze yourself to death. You don't want to analyze by immediately saying, this is the one I want. I am very, very fast, impatient when I pick something. I'll walk right out, I've got a plan, boom, I'm there. Every time I do anything financially, my wife has to step in and be my mediator. Just to give you guys a little bit of help, I am a fairly good financial executive. But in personal finance, when it has to do with purchases around the house, that may not be my best thing. I research it well. I immediately go in and say, okay, this is what I want, and then I get to the last step and think, oh man, I don't know if I want this, and I start throwing out possibilities. I realize that weakness, and as I start getting into the analyzation step, I will start by eliminating possibilities that just won't work. I don't immediately go to my first choice, even though that's the way I'm guided to go. Where I start is completely at the other end of the spectrum, and I say, okay, for all the data I have, what won't work for me? Let's go back to our college example for a second. Two biggest things when you get into college is your GPA, your SAT scores. Two biggest things. Now, there are other things that you have to consider, but those are the two biggest. When I came out of high school, I had to look at my GPA and my SAT score. I may have wanted to go to Harvard or Stanford or Yale, but if my GPA or SAT scores were not in that super high echelon, that's not a real possibility. So you have to factor, even as a stretch goal, maybe that's not a good option. I'll throw that out. Schools. If I wanted to go into finance that were basically agricultural schools, probably not a good option for me. Let's take those out. Schools that were in parts of the country that maybe I really just didn't want to live or I didn't want to go to school, after I had researched it, let's throw those out. What I start doing then is I start paring myself back from all of this data. I bring myself now into something that is somewhat more manageable. Now, I never get to one, but I get to maybe one grouping. And the grouping will probably be within my range of requirements, being my SAT scores, my GPA, where I want to go, but it's not one selection. I'm going to eliminate myself, but I'm going to leave myself a lot of options. Options. I cannot stress enough the importance of leaving yourself open to different options. As you look at it, remember that old saying, don't paint yourself into a corner. In goal setting, any goal, it can be a short-term goal, under a year, it can be an intermediate goal, somewhere between 1 and 5 years, it can be a long-range goal. You do not want to say, I have to be X. And it is so specific that if anything goes wrong in your plan and you can't get there, you're now back at square one. Very rarely do you ever get in a situation in a goal where you have to be so specific that if you miss even one thing, you can't get there. I made the comment that I ran a marathon. I ran a marathon. I ran the Chicago Marathon. I highly recommend it for everybody. It was the greatest experience I've had in a very long time. I never started out running the Chicago Marathon. I actually was watching one day the Boston Marathon. It's televised. I was flipping channels one day and I saw the Boston Marathon. I said, you know what? I wonder if I could ever run a marathon. I lived in the eastern seaboard. I thought, well, you know what? The Boston Marathon's close. Maybe that's something I should go do. As I started researching the Boston Marathon is for established runners. I didn't have it painted so black and white that I had to run in Boston, where I had to go qualify somewhere else. What I really wanted to do was run a marathon. Could I run 26.2 miles? Could I train a very average athlete and get myself to that ultimate goal? As I did my research and I went in, I left myself open to, I would be happy running any marathon. I wanted to run a full marathon. I didn't want to run a half. I wanted to run a full, but it didn't matter if it was Boston. It didn't have to be New York City. Actually, I wanted to run in a big city, so any big city would have been good for me. I wanted to be with a lot of people. I wanted it to be an experience that when I ran, I was around a lot of other people that had the same goal as I did, so I could feed off of their energy. I wanted to see what their reaction was. That was really my goal. So as I eliminated options, I didn't bring myself down to just one. I brought myself down to big city, a lot of people, and a marathon that was relatively an open format, meaning that as a new runner, I could get into it. Schools, same thing. If you're going to go to a good school, go to a good school. Go to a top 20 school. Go to a top 50 school. Go to a top 100 school. Don't paint yourself into, I have to go to this school, because if that's just not going to work, you're going to look at everything and say, I'm not sure if that's what I want. Within this step, especially in options, you have to have a range of options. When you look at what you're doing, you cannot paint yourself into a corner. You want to stretch yourself. You want to have a norm that you're shooting for. If you're going to school and you think you can get into a top 100 school, great. It's a good goal. If you want to push yourself to get into a top 50 school and you think you can do that by better extracurricular activities, better outside of school leadership courses, maybe a prep class for an SAT, do that. Push yourself. If you are in one of your first 2 years in high school and you can improve your GPA, do that. Push yourself into that realm of maybe I could get into a top 50 school. Don't ignore schools that may be above your classified norm of 100. If, for example, there's something they may be specializing in, then maybe they're a school that is not really ranked so high from the standpoint of the overall school, but in the area of study you want to go into, they may be a great school. Keep yourself open to those options. As you look at it and as you get further down this path, what you'll find is of the range of options, you will start narrowing your focus until at some point you do decide, this is where I want to go. Step 4 is exactly what we've been talking about, refining your goal. You want to take your original goal and you want to start bringing it in. But just to where I said, you want to have a min and a max point with that norm somewhere in between so you have a range in where you're going. But you have to give it enough depth that now you're saying, no longer I want to go to college. You have to say, I want to go to a top 100 college. I want to go to a top 100 college in the Southeast. You now can start visualizing what you want to do. And at this point of your process, you've been through your research. You have pushed out analytically everything that just will not work, and you're left with good options. And those good options are where now you can start seeing a little bit of the picture come into play. Back to my marathon example, yeah, I had thrown out Boston, I had thrown out New York, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to run in San Diego or Washington, D.C., or Chicago, or another big city. I was keeping myself to where I am going to run an open form marathon in a big city in the month of October. October, November is a very big marathon month. I thought that was the right time of the year to do it. It was a goal I was linking to because my birthday's in October, and I thought, you know what, that would be a good birthday present to myself. Let me target it in on that month. Let me target it in on a big city, and let me make it, kind of a birthday present to myself by the whole overall experience. So I could see it. I could see the time of year it was going to be. I could see the type of city it was going to be in. I could see the type of people I'd be running with, but it wasn't down to one place yet. Because it really, at that point, was too early because I hadn't even started really getting in the planning or execution phase of where I was going. Step 5, communicate. What am I talking about here? You listen to that old phrase, so let it be said, so let it be done. Once you have set your mind to something, you've gone through the first 4 steps, you've picked a general goal, you've gone out and you've researched it, you've analyzed it, you've eliminated possibilities, and you've refined your goal. Thus far, your goal is really your goal. You're keeping it in. You're thinking about it. You really don't want to talk about it at that point because you're still thinking, you're still formulating. It's your personal goal. Don't go to people too early with it because if you're unsure, they're going to do one of 2 things. They could lead you into a goal you really don't want to do yet, or they could persuade you not to go after a goal that you really wanted to do. So once you get into it and you've now said, okay, this is my goal, I'm going to go do it, you'll want to go talk about it. And I'm telling you the people you want to go talk about it to. You want to go talk about it to your friends, to your family, to people that are a support group for you. And the reason you want to do it is twofold. Number 1, those people will embrace whatever you want to do because you want to do it. They can see the passion in your face. They can see that, man, even though I would never want to run a marathon, Kevin obviously does, so I'm going to support him on it. That's good. They're going to do that. They don't have to understand it. It doesn't have to be their goal. It needs to be your goal. They also serve a very big second point. As we go on in this program, you're going to get into tough times. Things aren't going to always work as you want them to. You're going to get into the planning, execution. phase, it's going to get hard. And what's going to happen then is you're going to have moments of, why am I doing this? Where am I? How can I get out of it? Maybe I bit off more than I could chew. This was the wrong thing for me. Where your family and your friends really come in here is they don't have to say anything. But the fact that you've told them, the fact that you've stated that this is what I want to do, you now inside have an inner strength to say, it's bad. Man, it's tougher than I thought. I really bit off too much. But I cannot look at my wife in the face and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I cannot look at my kids and say, you know what, Daddy's not going to do X, because they knew Daddy wanted to do that, and they won't understand. Your friends, your family, they'll still love you if you decide not to. They'll still love you if something goes wrong that you can't control. Where they're going to help you is if you could do it, and you still wanted to do it, but it was just tough. They're going to help you through, and they're going to help you through in a positive way. All right, I think it's time for us to move on to step 6. This is where it gets fun. This is where I'm going to smile a little bit more because my wife is nice enough to be in the audience tonight, and she's giving me the smile more phase. That's where I try. It's that whole drive and determination thing. We're into the planning phase. We're going to start working now. You got your plan, kind of going out. You got a goal. You moved out. You started talking about it. Now you have to turn it into reality. How are you going to do that? Folks, you got a plan. And I'm telling you this from experience. I used to be the world's worst planner. I was so reactive in what I did. When I said I was unlucky, you make your own luck. I hope I didn't offend anybody by saying that. But every time people say I'm lucky now, I say thank you. I appreciate that. Because I look at that as I'm putting myself in opportunities for success in whatever it is I do. But that translates into you're lucky. I used to think, man, I'm the most unlucky person I've ever seen in my entire life. How can everything that you want not to happen to you on a regular basis? It's all about putting yourself in that right situation, that right option to do that. It comes from not planning well. So how do you plan? Everybody talks about planning. Planning's a thing that you see all the time. You do it unconsciously a lot just by going to the store. You go to the store to buy something. It takes a plan to go to the store and buy something. You have to figure out what are you going for? Why are you going to buy? It seems very obvious, but it's a plan. Bigger plans just involve a little bit more time, a little bit more structure, a little bit more steps along the way. So, how do you think about planning? You want to think about planning in short, manageable steps. Think of planning as running a marathon. Worst thing you can do when you get out in a long road race is think about the finish line. And mile 1, mile 2, the last thing you want to be thinking about is mile 26. It's just too far away. Your mind cannot handle it. You have to take it in pieces that you can process. So, what do? Well, you set up short or intermediate goals. We're going to talk about those just real briefly. A short-term goal is a goal that you can do in less than a year. Okay, it is something that if you're sitting down to really plan it and you're going through the 10 steps and you're thinking about each step, this is a big enough goal that you have to put some time into. That is a short-term goal. You may have longer goals. We talked about going to college or getting your MBA or going out and getting married. Those are probably intermediate goals. When couples decide to get married, it's not a short-term thing. It can be a short-term thing. That happens. It's nice. But many couples, what they do is they go into an intermediate goal. They say sometime in the next 3 years, we want to get married. Okay, how do you do that? Well, we have to think about how we're going to live. We have to think about where we want to get married. We want to think about how we want our wedding to be. Where is it going to be conducted? How much is it going to cost? What do we want to do afterwards? How long until we have kids? Having a family, you fall automatically, most cases, into an intermediate goal where you have many short-term goals to get there. When my wife and I first started dating, it was a very nice thing. I told her right out of the gate, I was not marrying anybody until I dated him for at least 3 years. My wife, and the love she is, made me marry her after 2 years and 362 days. I believe that's exactly 3 days short of 3 years. So she got me, but not by much. But during that time, what did we do? We did what all couples do. We thought about first, do we want to get married? And then once we decided we want to get married, we had to think about, okay, what's it going to cost? Where do we want to live? How are we still going to achieve the other goals we want to do once we are married? It's a lot of give and take, and you have to factor that plan together. But it's always an intermediate goal with a lot of short-term goals. Got to get engaged, right? Got to have your wedding, got to plan for that. You got to plan for your first few years of marriage. 3 short-term goals building into that intermediate goal. Okay, in any good planning situation, you got to have the infamous time and action calendar. You've got to have it. It's got to include the following: a clearly defined timeline. You cannot tell if you're measuring yourself appropriately if you don't know what to measure yourself to. So when you get into a situation, you have to say, okay, step 1 should take, and it's going to be an estimate. You're running a marathon. Step 1 may be, I've got to go read a book on a marathon. Okay, well, if you're going to do it, how long are you going to give yourself to read a book? A week? A month? You put the timeline down and set it. Then I need to start training. Okay, well, how long are you going to train for your marathon? You got to put it on there. Because right now you haven't started executing anything. What you're doing is laying out your plan to get ready to execute. You're spending all of your time trying to figure out what's in there. The plan has got to be all-encompassing. It's got to have a broad list of tasks. You have to think about, in the planning phase, nothing more than what is it going to take to get this done. Don't start executing it yet, because when you get into the execution phase, what happens to you is now you're in the battle. Right now you're planning for the battle. You have time. Your mind's clear. You can think about the things that are going to happen, and you can go attack those with all the vigor that you have in yourself when you get to the execution plan. Third thing is key. You have to have scheduled rest, especially as you become a more and more organized and focused goal setter. Because you get so good at rolling through the points that you just get so driven, and you're like, well, if I do this and I get to that, I can move to the next thing, and I can do this and I can do that. You got to slow down at some point and say, well, you know what? Where's the time for you? When are you going to feel that you can just think about yourself? When are you going to set aside time to say, this is my time to re-energize myself, to personally reflect on, am I doing what I wanted to do at this point? That's got to be in there. Because when you get in the fire, you're not going to think of it. This is the time to consider that. Finally, any good planning, you have to have contingency plans. You have to remember those options we talked about. Don't paint yourself into a corner. Your plan should have fingers. It should have, I go from step 1 to step 2. At step 2, I can either go right or left. Now, you probably want to go a certain direction, and you probably know that when you laid out your plan, which is fine. But when I hit that key point, if I can't go left, and that's the way I wanted to go left, right isn't so bad. So it now becomes second nature. As you get into it, you can say, well, I'm going along, that feels good, and then boom. It's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted to go left, but right's not so bad. It's right there in front of you. You've thought about it. Move into it. Contingency plan. Last statement is really the key that you've got to remember. In any good goal, it is always easier in the heat of the fire to modify the goal than it is to start over. If you paint yourself into a corner, what's going to happen is you're going to get right into that corner, and you're going to think all the work, the establishment of the goal, the research you went through, the analysis you went through, the refinement of it, all the people you told, all the work you planned, you have gone so far. If you can't work your way out of it and you have to go all the way back to step one, it is just mentally a killer. You don't want to be there. It may happen in some cases, but with good contingency planning, a lot of options, the ability to adapt and move to different situations, you can really circumvent that catastrophe, that disaster that people always say, well, I had this plan and it was great and I don't know what happened. It was a train wreck. Next thing I knew, everything was defunct and I couldn't go anywhere. You don't want to be there. You want to be in a situation where you're like, today wasn't so good, kind of ran into some problems, but you know what? I got a plan. I really wanted to go left. It's really bothering me, but I can still move and go right. Step 7. Oh, yeah. This is where now the real work begins. You got to start executing what you said you were going to do. I'm telling you, in the whole marathon thing, I was great. I was great through step 1. I was going to run a marathon. I was great through step 2. Did a lot of research on it. Step 3, yeah, I cashed out all my places, came back with, good options. Could have gone to Chicago or D.C. or here or there. Really refined my goal. Started talking to everybody, my wife, my people at work, friends, yada, yada. It's great. Got my plan all laid out. And I came to step 7. It was time to start running. It's time to get out there and start working, start practicing, start getting into where I was going. I'm telling you, that is literally where the rubber meets the road. In the marathon running, that's very literally that way, but that is where the rubber meets the road, and it's hard. Any good plan, it's going to be hard. You got to stay focused. You got to keep going back to that plan, and that plan now has become your security blanket because you know if you execute that plan, you're going to get there. It may not look like it, but you're going to get there because you've got a plan, you've thought out your plan, you were controlled in what you were thinking, you had a clear mind, so now it may look bad, but it's really not. You can go back and you can keep telling yourself, I'm okay. I'm okay because I got a plan. And in any big situation, if you have a plan, you feel better. The worst thing that somebody can ever face is not knowing where to go next. And I know everybody's been there. Life's bad, but if you know what you're going to do next, it's always okay. It's when you say, I have no idea what I'm going to do next. That's when you see the defeated person. If you have a plan, it's, once again, you're back to, I wanted to go left, but I can still go right. You're okay. When it gets tough, remember, no real accomplishment is ever earned without its fair share of tough times. I had the great pleasure of joining the Indiana Army National Guard. And I became an officer in the Indiana Army National Guard, and I loved it. I had to go through my officer basic course, which was, I'd been through basic training as an enlisted man, and that was, boot camp. You hear all the stories, and it is all of that and then some. Your officer basic course is very much that same way, but it is even more intensified because it's the honor thing of becoming an officer. My dad was an officer of 30 years in the U.S. Army, so I had personally a lot of pride to do that, to kind of walk in his footsteps and try to follow what he did. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't always easy at 2 o'clock in the morning when we're doing grass drills and I hadn't slept but maybe 4 hours in a week. And there was a lot of times I was thinking to myself, what am I doing here? Is this really that important to me to be in the Guard? Because I was working a full-time job outside of that to really come and do this. This was my weekends. This was my vacation time. This was time away from my fiancée. This was what I considered to be my hobby. But when I got done, when I felt the accomplishment of completing that goal, the times I go back and talk about are the wars. Everybody talks about the war stories. What you talk about are the tough times that you went through in accomplishing any great goal. Because that's what made it so good for you to earn. Were the tough times. What gets you through is a good plan, a lot of conviction, that help of your family and support group. But that's what's going to put you through that is At the end of this, it's all going to be worthwhile. Now getting to my wife's favorite step. Step 8, adapt. Adapt. The Murphys, everybody knows the Murphys, right? The Murphys live everywhere. Every time you got a good plan, you start executing that plan, something comes up and derails your train. I don't care how hard you've practiced, how hard you've trained, how good your plan is, the Murphys will show up. Expect the unexpected. It's there. It's going to be there. But don't worry, because we have the contingency plan. That right turn that we've been talking about, we have the contingency plan. And if necessary, you're going to modify your plan to still achieve your goal. I have on here, remain in the scope of your goal. And I want to explain that a little bit. The reason I said you had options, and you have your high expectation and your mid and your low, you want to give yourself a range. You may not always hit your stretch goal. You may not. You want to work for it because it's going to make you better. It's definitely going to make you better. But if you give yourself that range, you're still going to get into a situation where you feel good about finishing your goal because you have completed a very tough goal. And it's given you the flexibility that if you miss something by 5 minutes or a month or some measurement that you had, if it's within a range that is still a very good job, you want to feel good about that. You want to give yourself that flexibility. Contingency planning may take you more time. You can always retool. Everybody has a retool. That's what a contingency plan will do. A contingency plan is never as good as your original plan because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what the Murphys have brought for you, so you got to be ready for it. So what it gives you is a framework to start really adapting and moving in a new direction. As you get in that direction, you have to step into it freely. This is where my wife always comes back on me. I get in this and the Murphys show up and I get absolutely derailed because my plan has to work. My plan is perfect because I did it, right? Because I did it. That's what everybody feels. If you do your own plan, you feel pretty good about your plan, right? Nobody raises their hand and says, I did a plan, I don't like it. You feel good about your plan. It's all right. Murphys are there. Go with it, all right? Make sure you're not sacrificing or going to your contingency plan too early. So try to stay to the course. When it becomes very clear you can't, go ahead and move with it. Move to that new contingency plan. Adapt, but still stay in the focus of your overall goal. Oh yeah, step 9, visualize. You got to visualize what you want to do. When things get tough, when the Murphys show up, when you're in the middle of your execution, what gets you home is visualizing now the end. Visualizing the accomplishment of what you're doing. How many golf fans we got in here? I love golf fans because I love Caddyshack. Got to be the ball. Be the ball. Be the ball. If you're the ball, if you're the ball, if you are the ball, you are going to find where you want to go. You can hit that green. You can hit that fairway. You can make that putt because now you have a visualization of where it's going to go. And folks, for those of you that don't play golf, or for those of you that do, try it. I'm a very average golfer. My brother-in-laws tell me that all the time, probably less than very average. But if I walk up to a ball and I go to hit it, and my first thought is, yeah, either A, I'm going to hit it bad, or B, I don't know where I'm going to hit it, guaranteed that ball is going to go someplace I don't want it to go. If I walk up to the ball and I think in my mind, I see this ball going right down the fairway. I see it going right down the fairway as if I were Tiger Woods, it's going right down the fairway. 9 times out of 10, that is going to be one of my best shots because I've seen it. Your mind is an amazing thing. If you tell yourself you can do something, you are going to be amazed at how well your mind helps your body overcome it. You don't have to be a great golfer to hit a Tiger Woods shot. You won't do it every time without a lot of practice, but on those rare occasions you will do it because your mind will convince your body to do that. But it's got to see it. Seeing is believing. It's got to see it. If you can see it in your mind and you can visualize it, it will happen. You will be able to go that extra distance. You will be able to hit the ball a little bit further. You'll be able to go a little bit better at whatever you're trying to do if you can see yourself. Another great golf movie, Happy Gilmore. Have you seen Happy? Go to that happy place. When you're in a situation and you're feeling just woe is me, go to that place that you feel comfortable in and think about completion of your goal. As I talked about grass drills at 2 in the morning, I'm telling you, there were a lot of places I wanted to go besides grass drills at 2 in the morning being yelled at during my officer basic course. But what got me through that was, you know what? There's a method to the madness. They're trying to break us down to make us more of a team. If we all go through this together, I knew all the stories, I knew all the reasons behind it, I had thought about it analytically. If they break us down together, we're going to be built up together, and we're going to be a good team. And the team is always, always better than any individual. So as I got there, I kept thinking, it's bad now, but it's going to get better. It's going to get a lot better. And eventually I'm going to get to the end, and I'm going to feel, you know what? This was all worth it. Last thing I'll leave you with is mile 25 of a marathon. I told you at the beginning of a marathon, you never think about the end. You never think about the end until you start getting closer or until you get into a tough situation. When I was running the Chicago Marathon, I had a very interesting experience. I was running, and the temperature must have gone up 10 degrees. And I was running, and I'm not a very good runner, as I said. I'm not a very good runner. But I was running, I was trying my hardest, and I had really, from my own personal time, done pretty good until I got to about mile 15. Degrees went up 10 degrees. I was getting ready to make the turn. I was looking for the mile 16 mile marker. And running past me at almost light speed was a very athletic mother pushing a 3-child stroller. Now, it was a running stroller, but it had 3 children in it that went about the age of my children are now. I think I saw a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and she ran past me like I was standing still at mile 15. Not a good runner. She looked like a very good runner. Folks, she was pushing 3 other people and blowing past me. I was about as demoralized as I could get at that point. I passed mile 16, and in my mind must have thought it was mile 17. Because when I came up on mile 17, I now thought that the people in Chicago were trying to just extend the marathon by me hitting mile 17 over and over and over again. I had to go to my happy place. From mile 17 to mile 25, all I thought about was finishing the marathon. I walked through all the things that I'd done to get there. All the steps I'd gone through, all my training, everything that happened. And what it did is it allowed my mind to overcome the pain my body was in and really the depression my mind was in to get me to where I was till I got to mile 25. When I got to mile 25, I could fully see the finish. Still a mile away. That was a long mile and my feet hurt a lot. But I could see the end and I could go there because I had visualized it so many times. It was probably better than I thought it was, and that's a strange thing to say because you always visualize a little bit better than something is, but it was very close to what I visualized. I had seen it so many times. I was coming to the end of my goal, and there's nothing as good as coming to the end of your goal. Step 10, you've gotten there. We're done. It's time to self-actualize. What the heck does that mean? Self-actualize. Once you have completed your goal, go out and celebrate. Enjoy it. Think about nothing more than you have achieved whatever you set out to do. Enjoy that time because that is the time that just innately your mind will say, wow, I've made it. Think about what I've done. You'll go through all the progression of how you got there. You're back through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You're all the way through to the very end. Once you've done that and it's gone through your mind a few times, it's now time to sit down. A couple days later, you want to sit down and you want to go through that experience in a personal reflection type mode. You want to think about it from, what did I really do good? What did I do well in that situation? What could I have improved on? How could I have gone out and said, yeah, my planning was good, but it could have been better in this scenario. My execution of my training was good, but it could have been better if I had gone this way. What contingency plan had I not thought of that I should have? What option did I pick that was even better than what I thought it was going to be when I got to the end? Because now I had the ability of the 20/20. I could go back and really see what I had. That type of setup is exactly what I needed to kind of help me through my next goal. Self-actualization should be done at the end of any step. It doesn't have to be at the end of your full goal. Some goals go a lifetime. A long-range goal can go 20 years. If you set out right out of school and say, I want to be a CEO, you might as well start working day one, folks. But it is going to be a series of intermediate goals. It's going to even be more short-term goals to get to where you want to go. And it's going to take years. Set aside places where you complete a short-term goal that may be part of an intermediate goal, and set back and go through self-actualization at that point. If that's too long for you, set time in your plan to go through self-actualization of at least maybe the first half of your goal. That way you know, what am I doing? How am I getting there? And then when you're ready to move on to the second part of your goal or your next goal, you're going to be all the smarter for it. I want to quickly go through the basic steps right at the end of this thing. We've talked about 10 basic steps. Step 1 was the establishment of the goal. Step 2 was research, not to border into analysis, which is step 3 until you get there. Step 4 is refinement of your goal. Step 5, make sure you communicate it. Pick your loved ones, your support group. Step 6 is planning. Step 7, the work begins. That's execution. Step 8, adapt. Don't worry. Embrace the Murphys. They're going to be there. Step 9, visualize getting to the end of your goal. And when you get there, step 10, enjoy it. Enjoy it, and then come back to the personal reflection to see how you can improve in the future. I really want to thank you for coming out tonight and hearing me. I would love to hear your comments on what you thought of the seminar, how I could get better, because you're going to help me with my personal reflection. I have a website, www.artofgoalsetting.com. I would love for you to come, give me your comments. How could I improve it? What steps would you like me to talk about more? Is there a specific topic that you'd like me to go and talk about? Or if you would like me to come and talk for you, I would love to do it. I want to thank you very much. God bless.